The night before my first bundling, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed in the dark, staring at the wooden beams above me, listening to the wind push against the farmhouse walls. My younger sister was breathing slowly beside me, already gone somewhere peaceful in her dreams. And I was wide awake, heart thumping in my chest, trying to remember everything my mother had told me about what was going to happen. Which was nothing. She had told me absolutely nothing. I was 17 years old. His name was Samuel, and in less than 24 hours, he would be climbing through the dark, up the stairs of my family's house, and lying down beside me in that very bed. With my parents' blessing, with the community's approval, with centuries of tradition behind him. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do when he got there. My name is Hannah. And this is Hannah the Amish Girl. The channel where I finally say the things my community would never allow me to say out loud. I grew up Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I left a few years ago. What I share here are the real stories. Not the tourist version, not the quilt and buggy postcard. The truth, from someone who actually lived it. If this is your first time here, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story, because there is so much I haven't told you yet. Now let me explain something before I take you into those 3 nights, because most people who find this channel have never heard the word bundling in their lives, and the ones who have usually have it completely wrong. Bundling is a courtship practice. It goes back centuries, and long before the Amish even existed as a community. In colonial-era Europe, in peasant homes where a single fire heated the whole house and winter came in through the walls, there was simply no private space for a young man and woman to get to know each other. So they did what was practical. They lay down together, fully clothed, under heavy quilts, and they talked through the night while the rest of the family slept nearby. The Anabaptists brought this practice to America, and while the rest of the country quietly abandoned it sometime in the 1800s, the Amish held on. In my community, it worked like this. After Sunday evening singings, those youth gatherings where Amish teenagers socialize after church, a boy could send word through a brother or a cousin that he wanted to come calling. If the girl agreed, then he would arrive after the household had gone to bed, usually past 10 at night. He would come quietly. He would climb the stairs. He would knock softly. And if she said, "Come in," he would enter, lie down beside her, and the night would unfold from there. The official rules were clear: fully clothed at all times, no removal of anything, physical contact limited to holding hands, an arm around the shoulder. Kissing depended on the community and the stage of courtship. Anything below the waist, absolutely forbidden. And the girl could refuse any boy at any time for any reason. Those were the rules. What nobody told me was what it actually felt like to lie next to a person you barely know while the whole dark house breathes around you. What nobody told me was what your body does when it hasn't been given any information, any language, any framework whatsoever for what's happening inside it. So let me tell you. Samuel came the first time on a Saturday night in November. I heard his boots on the porch steps before I heard his knock. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I had changed out of my dress into my sleeping clothes, which felt like a decision I had somehow made wrong without knowing the right answer. I didn't know the protocol. No one had explained the protocol. He knocked. 2 soft taps. "Come in," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. The door opened, and there he was. Tall, narrow-shouldered, his dark hair damp from the cold outside. He was 19. He worked his father's dairy operation 6 days a week. I had spoken to him maybe 4 times in my life, always with other people nearby, always about nothing. The weather, someone's new horse, whether the corn had come in well this season. Now he was standing in the doorway of my bedroom in the dark. He didn't say anything right away. He nodded once, the way Amish men nod when they're trying to seem composed. Then he walked to the bed, sat on the edge for a moment, and lay down beside me on top of the quilt. We were both absolutely rigid. The silence stretched out so long I started counting my own heartbeats just to have something to do. The lamp on the nightstand was turned very low. I could hear my sister stirring in her sleep in the next room. I could hear the horses in the barn shifting their weight. He spoke first. "Cold out tonight." "Yes," I said. "Very cold. Your father's fields look good from the road. Thank you. He worked hard on them this year." Another long silence. That was the first 40 minutes of our first night together. His father's horses, my father's fields, whether the Zook family's new barn would be ready before the first real snow. I lay there beside him, my hands folded carefully over my middle, aware of exactly how much space existed between us, and exactly what it felt like when that space got smaller by even a fraction. At some point, his hand found mine under the quilt, just his fingers over my fingers, warm, careful, like he was asking a question without using any words. I didn't pull away. We lay like that until almost 2 a.m, talking in low voices about small things, his hand over mine, unmoving, just present. When he finally got up to leave, he stood at the door for a moment with his back to me. "Can I come back next week?" "Yes," I said. And he left. I lay there in the dark afterward and tried to understand what I was feeling. It wasn't romance, not exactly. It wasn't fear anymore either. It was something quieter than both of those things, like the feeling of a door that has been opened just slightly, just enough to let in a thin line of light, but not enough to see what's on the other side. I want to stop here for a moment, because what I've just described, that first careful night, is bundling at its most innocent. And I know that some of you are already wondering if it's always that gentle. It isn't. Before I tell you about the second night and the third, I want you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on that notification bell. The stories I share here are the ones that were never allowed to be spoken inside those communities. If they matter to you, Mom, please make sure you never miss one. The second night, Samuel came easier. He knocked quieter, as if he already knew the rhythm of the house. He lay down without the long pause at the edge of the bed, and the conversation came more naturally, not about crops and weather, but about real things. He told me he wasn't sure he wanted to take over his father's operation. He said it in a low voice, like even saying it quietly out loud was dangerous. I told him I sometimes sat by the creek behind our property and tried to imagine what was on the other side of the tree line. Not a plan, just a feeling. He turned his head and looked at me in the dim light. "You think about leaving?" "Everyone thinks about it," I said. "Before they stop." He didn't answer that, but he didn't look away either. By the end of the second night, we were lying close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off him through the fabric. He kissed me once, very lightly, at the corner of my mouth, more like a question than a statement. And then he said good night and left before 4. I want to be honest with you about what that second night stirred up in me, because this is exactly the part that nobody in my community ever acknowledged. My body had responses I had no names for, warmth where warmth had no business being, a kind of attention, heightened and specific, to the exact place where his shoulder pressed against mine. I had been taught, in the way that Amish girls are taught things, which is to say by silence and implication. That physical feeling was something to be endured in marriage and irrelevant outside of it. I had no category for desire. I had no language for it. I had no one to ask, so instead I lay awake long after he left and felt deeply, profoundly confused. Not because something wrong had happened, but because something completely natural had happened inside my own body, and I had been left entirely alone with it, with no map, no words, and no permission to speak. That confusion is not a small thing. It followed me for years. The third night was the one that taught me something I still think about today. Samuel came late, later than the other 2 times. I had almost given up waiting and fallen asleep when I heard the familiar sound of his boots on the porch. He seemed different when he came in, quieter in a heavier way. Not the composed quiet of the first night, but something more weighted. We lay in the dark, and after a while he said, "My father told me today that the farm won't be able to support 2 households, that there's no future in it for me the way I'd imagined. I didn't say anything right away, I just listened. He said, "Sometimes I feel like the whole life has already been decided and I'm just walking into the shape of it." I knew exactly what he meant. I had felt that way since I was old enough to understand that my education would end at 14, that my life's work had already been named for me, that the shape waiting for me had a specific outline: wife, mother, keeper of a house, yielder of her own will. I said, maybe that's what tonight is for. Not deciding anything, just being somewhere that isn't that feeling for a few hours. He was quiet a long time. Then he said, "Yes, I think that's exactly what this is." We talked until almost 3. He held my hand the whole time. When he left, he paused at the door longer than usual. He didn't ask if he could come back a 4th time. He didn't come back. A few months later, I heard he was bundling with a girl from a neighboring district. I wasn't hurt by it. What we had given each other across those 3 nights wasn't romantic love. Not yet, maybe not ever. It was something rarer and stranger than that. It was the experience of being witnessed, of saying out loud, in the dark, to another person, the things that felt too heavy to carry alone. Bundling at its best was that. 2 young people pressing their real selves against the edges of a world that had very little room for real selves. The problem was that bundling at its worst was something else entirely. And the system never taught us the difference. It put us in the dark together and trusted willpower and goodness, and left us without language, without education, without any honest conversation about what our bodies were doing or what we were allowed to feel or where the line was and why. I was one of the lucky ones. Samuel was gentle. He asked before he came closer. He left when he said he would. Not every girl lying in the dark waiting for boots on the stairs was that lucky. When I left at 22, the shunning came quickly. Letters returned, phone calls unanswered. The door of my parents' house closed in a way I still feel sometimes in the middle of ordinary days. In therapy, I learned the words that had been missing my whole life: consent, autonomy, boundaries. I learned that desire is not sin, it's biology. And biology deserves honest information, not silence dressed up as modesty. I grieve the girl who lay in that bed, wide-eyed in the dark, counting her heartbeats, feeling things she had no names for and no one to ask about. She was not wicked for feeling them. She was just young and human and completely alone inside her own experience. The Amish world gave me things I carry still: a capacity for stillness, a knowledge of hard work that goes all the way down to the bone, a sense of community so deep it has a texture you can almost touch. But it also handed me my own body as a mystery, and my own feelings as a danger. And that is not a kindness. That is not holiness. That is just silence. Doing what silence always does. Protecting a system by keeping the people inside it uninformed. If you grew up somewhere that handed you your body as a problem to be managed instead of a life to be understood, I see you. If you ever lay in the dark next to someone and felt things you had no words for and carried the confusion of that for years afterward, you are not alone. And you were never wrong for feeling what you felt. You were human. And being human was never something to apologize for. If this story stayed with you, please subscribe to Hannah the Amish Girl, like this video, and make sure you've turned on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. There is still so much I haven't said. Until next time, choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.